The controller told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space.
Is there a correlation between any of the characteristics of these UAPs, UFOs?
What we tend to see are the smaller vehicles tend to be, think of a sports car. The large ones tend to be, not always, but almost exclusively either triangular shape or boomerang shape.
Werewolves? I see dead people walking around like regular people. They don't see each other. They only see what they want to see. They don't know they're dead.
The UFO UAP community was fairly surprised. Shocked might be a better word.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human.
Do you think there is life on other planets?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but I suppose there would be.
I've seen a flying saucer.
You've seen one?
Yes, definitely. At Lane Cove.
When was this?
1953.
You don't think this is a figment of your imagination?
Several other people with me saw it.
I'm not wishing that all that share with me.
There is now a new UFO whistleblower with some major bombshell-level statements.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This episode is brought to you by some amazing people. Tabin R., Eddie Tab, Diane Boss, Mecca Mickey, Dorothy Hawkins, Jeanette Angel, Kelly Lewis, Richard and Fern Harrison, Linda Liu, Dave Wright, Nathan from The Quantum Show, Jay Grove, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, Enzo Cyril, Lisa B., Gary T., Moon at Noon, Aaron's Energy 313, T-Bone, Marcel Gufonian Metalhead, KC, Welcome to the Show, Janine Hollis, Cloudwalker, Alien Bug, Brian L., Shelley Montgomery, Prepper 88 M Wife Patriot, and Blue Crossroads. And a special thank you to all of our subscribers on YouTube, Spotify, and now over on Rumble. If you wish to support the podcast, you can hit that join button below and to become an Eyes to That Sky member. Or if you want to join our Patreon or to provide other support, the links are below in the show description. But now, on with the show. Welcome to the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast, where we explore the unexplained and mysterious phenomena that have occurred throughout the state of Michigan and beyond.
From UFO sightings to ghostly encounters, we delve deep into the stories, the evidence, and the theories behind these strange events.
We are your hosts. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Wayne.
We are an educator duo that after an encounter with a triangular UFO in 2018 in Michigan, we decided to investigate UFOs and the paranormal. In this podcast, we will be speaking with eyewitnesses, experts, and researchers to uncover the truth about some of the most intriguing cases of paranormal activity in and around Michigan.
Our goal is not to convince anyone of the existence of these phenomena, but rather to provide a platform for discussion and exploration. So, buckle up and join us on this journey down the paranormal rabbit hole.
On an escalator.
All right. Hello, everybody. And we are coming to you from within the shadow of the great Motor City, Detroit, Michigan, deep within our underground bunker. We want to thank you for joining us for another October episode. It is Sunday, October 27th, 2024. Just 4 more days until Halloween. And the kids in our classrooms will be all tripping out on.
They're going to be
all
in
kinds of
candy
crazy
comas
candy.
on Friday.
Yes.
All teachers nationwide the day after
Yep.
Halloween. It's like, okay, what video can we show?
Absolutely, because it's going to be a Friday too. So, they're just, if they do show up for school, they're going to have pockets full of candy. So it's going to be a nightmare of wrappers and God knows what. But we're going to continue our Spooktober shows as we talk with the authors of a new book tonight. And this is going to be very fascinating because there's some things in here that I have never heard of before, and I can't wait to cover this. But the book is called Cosmic Convergence, Journeys of Walk-ins, Starseeds, and Hybrids. But first, we have some quick announcements before we bring our guests on. Michelle, why don't you take
Don't
it
forget,
away?
if you have a story that you would like to tell, you can email us at the show at mi.ufo.podcast@gmail.com. So, and we have been getting some interesting stories emailed to us and sent to us over on the Facebook group.
Absolutely.
There's like a little bit of a hot spot up near Frankenmuth, Michigan over the last, week?
Yeah, there have been some major sightings, and we got some good videos and pictures and stuff sent to us too. So be looking for a special show on the side here coming up where we're going to talk some more about what's going on here in Michigan, because seems to be really picking up as we get into these colder months. So, but anyways, if you would like to make a donation to the show, that's how we keep this podcast and show going. You can do that with PayPal, Super Chats. You can buy us a coffee. You can check out our merchandise store or join the Patreon, and all of those links can be found below in the show description. If you want to, you can become a YouTube member as well. And that's just for a small fee every month. And if you do become a Patreon and a YouTube member, we will give you a shout out at the beginning of the show and
I
in
will
the credits.
read a very,
Yes.
very long list of
Michelle
names
is-
like I have been.
Michelle is up to reading 29 names at the beginning of the show right now. So, let's keep that number going up for her to sit there and have to re-record that every week. So that helps out a lot. But that's as a special thank you. We'll put you in the credits at the end of the show and also give you a shout out at the beginning. All right. So, analytics. It's analytics time, people. Guess what? 56.7 of you are not subscribed that are watching this right now or are watching this later and you're not subscribed. Help us out with that algorithm, because YouTube plays those silly games. Just hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Share us out. You know what to do with all of that. And another thing, too, is our Spotify listeners. Once we release this as an audio, Spotify people, make sure you're hitting that follow. So as soon as a new episode comes out, you can get notified of it and listen to it. And that helps us out on the Spotify side. So all right, Michelle, why don't you go ahead and start yelling at people in chat? I see we got quite a few right now.
So it's time for me to type in all caps. Now, hello to Diane Boss, who has joined us today, Nathan from the Quantum Show. We have Guy Merritt with us. We haven't seen Guy in a little while.
Yep.
We have Patrick O'Leary, and we've got Rick Davis. We've got Dave, what is that, Ted Ball over Lake Huron. Lake Huron's one of my favorites, by the way. Grew up going up to Tawas all the time.
He says eyes over Lake Huron reporting.
Yep. We've got Zach is here today. I think we have another Gary too. We've got two Garys.
We got two Garys in the in the crowd, so that's going to be confusing. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and get ready to bring on our guest. Now, we've heard a lot of strange things over the last couple years, especially with the UAP reports and Arrow and ATIP and OSAP and all of these things. But there seems to be a constant running narrative going on. Out of the government, we have the threat narrative. From people that we interview, we have a whole different type of narrative going on. And we've heard of hybrids before. We've heard of abductions and implants and these kind of things. But now we're hearing something new. And Starseeds, I think that's been around a while. And we've talked about that a little bit. But now we have this idea of walk-ins. So we're going to bring on our guest here in just a minute. Michelle, why don't you give us a quick rundown on their bios?
Okay, so we have two. We have Sheila Seppi is the co-author of Cosmic Convergence, Journeys of Walk-ins, Starseeds, and Hybrids, and a soul exchange walk-in who entered the body of a 38-year-old mother with 3 children and experienced instantaneous healing from documented illnesses. She emerged with new spiritual gifts and memories, transforming her life completely. In 2019, Sheila published Walk-ins, Cosmology of the Soul. She is an international speaker, event coordinator, multidimensional life coach, holographic alchemist, light language linguist, regression therapist, shamanic practitioner, and spiritual teacher. Sheila uses higher dimensional frequencies to empower others to embrace their higher selves. Sheila founded the Conscious Awakening Network and Spirit Way Wellness. Her goal is to help people spiritually remember who they truly are. And we have Barbara Lamb with us. She is a licensed psychotherapist, recently retired, and a current hypnotherapist and regression therapist. She is the co-author of Cosmic Convergence, The Journeys of Walk-ins, Starseeds, and Hybrids, and considered one of the world's leading authorities in the field of ufology and extraterrestrial contact. Since 1991, she has regressed countless numbers of people to some of their past lives. Barbara has been a featured lecturer of dozens of conferences throughout the U.S. and abroad. She has given hundreds of interviews for television programs, including Ancient Aliens and Netflix, and radio interviews on Coast to Coast AM radio, Gaia TV, films, YouTube, the Conscious Awakening Network, and the Internet. She has received 5 Lifetime Achievement Awards from 5 major conferences for her work in giving help and support to experiencers of ET contact and furthering the field of ufology. She is an author and co-authored Crop Circles Revealed, Alien Experiences, Meet the Hybrids, Kids Adventures with ET Friends in Space, and now the Cosmic Convergence, The Journeys of Walk-ins, Starseeds, and Hybrids.
Whew. Man, that's a lot.
And
almost like you're making a video of
that was the shortened version.
Right. That's almost like you're making another video of people who've joined our memberships. That's pretty impressive. Now we need to take a break. I need a nap. All right. Okay. No, we got to bring them on. All right, everybody. So let's go ahead and welcome Barbara Lamb and Sheila Seppi. Welcome, ladies. Glad to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. I guess we should start like we're in a classroom. And I think what we should do is the new book that you guys have put out. We talk about walk-ins, starseeds, and hybrids. What are those 3 things? Can you break it down for us like we're children in our classrooms and give us the vocabulary words and the terms and the definitions?
Absolutely. So thanks so much for having us here. I really appreciate it. So hello, everybody. Yeah, walk-ins is a concept that had it not happened to me, I would not have believed. But a walk-in traditionally is when one soul leaves and another soul enters into the body. But as I've begun to work with other walk-ins, I've discovered there's many, many types of walk-ins. So it's not just when a soul vacates and a new soul comes in. The other thing is with walk-ins, a lot of times they don't even know that they're a walk-in. Now with me, when my event happened, it was very, very visceral. And I remember it as if it had happened yesterday. And then a lot of times people, they wake up and they just start feeling different. They don't know why, they don't know how. One gentleman I know was sound asleep in bed. All of a sudden, his back arched and he went back to sleep. And he said, I thought I was having a back spasm. He didn't realize that at that moment, a walk in had entered into the body. And so, let me tell you just real quickly, there are a couple types of walk-ins that a lot of people may be able to identify with, or at least they've heard the terminology. So the first one is like a braided soul. That's where one soul is in the body, another soul enters in, and those two souls symbiotically act as one. Okay. But there's two totally different souls. There's what's called an overlay, where you have the original soul or the natal soul. Another soul comes in kind of like a neoprene suit, and it helps the other soul. It serves as a battery charger, or it can serve as a placeholder while this other soul goes off to do something else. Then at the end, they either merge together as one, or they will separate and the other soul goes back to where it is. There are also what's called step-ins or step-downs. Now, those are very, very similar to a soul exchange walk-in, where one soul leaves and another soul comes in. In my case, that's a permanent situation. But if I were a step-down or a step-in a few years, this soul would leave and another soul would come in. And so it's kind of like they have this constant dance of the soul that's going on. Then there's multi-dimensional souls, multi-layered souls. There's all kinds of different walk-in souls. But each of these walk-ins who have come in for a very specific purpose, and they've come in to assist humanity. I have never met a walk-in that has come in to cause harm. Some people say, oh, I've had a walk-in, and they're very, very negative. Well, you may have had something to walk in, but it's not a new walk-in soul. It could be something from the other realms, okay? The other thing with starseeds, they're very similar to walk-ins because, our souls have to come from somewhere. So in our book, one of the chapters, I really talk about the ascension process and how we begin with source energy and how we then end up attaching to the soul or to the physical form, which then becomes the personality of this lifetime. But these souls have to come from somewhere. And they either will come to us from the angelic realm, they'll come to us from a different planet. I look at this as our galactic family. Some people would say aliens, other people would say extraterrestrials, but these souls come in from another planet to have a human experience. Now, then we get into what's called a starseed. And a starseed is when someone wakes up and they have very distinct memories about a planet that they came from, or they have an affinity for a certain planet. Like walk-ins, and I'm going to ask Barbara to talk about hybrids, because when we talk about these three groups of people, they all have a lot of things that's very, very similar. They have a lot in common. A lot of times they have a longing for home and they really don't even know where home is, or they go out and they look up at the sky. In my case, being a walk-in, I had very few memories of the previous life, and that can be kind of scary, okay? And then with a starseed, they may have a lot of memories, and that just kind of blows their mind. It's like, oh my God, am I going crazy? So with all of these scenarios, you have individuals who have these life-changing events.
And I would like to just add that all of these types of beings that we talk about in Cosmic Convergence the walk-ins, the starseeds, and the hybrids, they're all very good. The beings who have come in one of these three ways to live with us here as humans, they're all very, very well-intentioned, helpful, benevolent beings, and they've been sent by extraterrestrial beings or spiritual dimension beings to really help humanity. So, first of all, it could sound a little bit creepy to some people about somebody coming in and taking over your body and living in your body, and you, the consciousness, the soul of you, leaves. I mean, that could be, it sounds like the subject of a good horror film, but it is not that way at all. It's totally benevolent. It's totally to help us. I think that a lot of the beings out there, spiritual and other dimensional and extraterrestrial beings, are really very aware of us here on Earth and aware of humanity and a lot of the really difficult things going on, the negative things going on in humanity. And maybe that's always been the case with the human race. It seems like it when you look back over history. But nowadays, I think it's even worse, and the consequences are greater because of the nuclear capability that so many nations have and the threats of sending those weapons off and destroying the earth, and then the climate change problem. So anyway, many of these very benevolent beings really see and care about the fact that humanity really needs some help. And so there are these three ways that we are acquainted with in which they send help. Another fact is that the extraterrestrial beings and the spiritual beings who would like to help humanity, they cannot come here and live here and do that themselves.
Right.
Because they would not be able to survive our environment, our density, our viruses, our bacteria. So because they cannot come here and they would still like to see the helpful work happen here, that's why they send people to be walk-ins and starseeds and hybrids. So I'll go on now to speak a bit about the hybrids. There really are two basic categories of hybrids. One of the categories is the hybrids who have mostly a proportion of extraterrestrial genetics in them, far more than a proportion of human genetics. And so they cannot live here either. They stay on the ships and work with the beings who created them, and sometimes on the planets of those beings, but they actually cannot be here. They might visit for just a minute or two here and there, but they couldn't really live here and have a whole lifetime here. So then there's a second category of hybrids, and these are the ones that do live here on Earth with us as people, as human beings. So these beings are created in much the same way, which I'll talk about briefly, as the ones who live on the ship. So basically what happens is that the beings come and take the eggs from a human female, and they take sperm from a human male, and they take that on board and they mix it together, the sperm and the egg, with extraterrestrial genetics. So they create a new little embryo, and on another occasion, they implant that little embryo in the womb of the human woman whose eggs they are using. And she usually is not aware of that at all. She's sort of in an unconscious state when those encounters and that sort of maneuver is happening. And then she gestates that little embryo for a couple of months. And if this is a hybrid embryo that is going to be living on the ship because of having mostly the extraterrestrial genetics, that little embryo will be removed from the woman. Again, she usually has no conscious awareness of that. And then that little embryo is gestated in a tank of special fluid on the ship. It's always monitored with tubes and wires and to kind of a control mechanism to make sure everything is going well in the development of that little embryo. So if the embryo goes further into a fetus and then at a certain point is ready to be born, that is taken out and raised on the ship. And that one will live his or her life completely, totally with those beings on the ship and not come to Earth. But the second category of these hybrids is that it's the same procedure at the beginning with the eggs and the sperm combining with the extraterrestrial genetics put back into the mother's womb. And then that embryo grows into a fetus in full term and is born here on Earth. And those babies are hybridized, but nobody knows it. And certainly the hybrid baby doesn't know it. And so these hybrids go through babyhood, infancy, toddler lives, childhood, teenage, adult lives. And by the time that they are adult, usually they become aware that they are really a hybrid and that they are here for benevolent service. And all along, since the very earliest days of these hybrids, they have had a number of senses that most little children don't have. In other words, they all seem to have a whole range of psychic abilities and healing abilities and a lot of sensitivities. Like some of them say, I've always felt so difficult in the density here on Earth and our vibrations, which are different than the density that the extraterrestrial portion of them had come from. And they always feel very different than any other children that they know, and they feel different from everybody in their family. And in most cases, they feel very strongly that the family that they were born to here is not somehow their real family, and that their real family is out there in space. And these children really miss that real family, the real family being extraterrestrial beings. And another feature of them is that they, from a very early age, have many, many visits from these other beings. And very often these beings are happening when there's nobody else in the family right there with them. So many of the visits happen at night when they're alone in their own room, and nobody else in the family even knows that in most cases. But they do have many visits throughout their whole lives from the beings who contributed their genetics to this person. And they welcome these visits. There's no such thing as abduction for these hybrid people because they welcome the visits of the beings. They love to have contact with them because, as I said earlier, they feel like these beings are really their true family. So these hybrids grow up to give a lot of really wonderful services to other human beings here in society on Earth. And they do this by offering healing services, consciousness raising services. They give webinars, they do seminars, they give conferences, they give lectures, they do writing. Anyway, they're doing everything they can to help where they see that help is needed by individuals, and then more publicly in terms of raising the consciousness of humanity. One of the things that they do also is to help to raise awareness and preparation for the ascension process, which is happening. And another one of their missions is simply to acquaint people with the fact that there are all these other extraterrestrial lives out there in the cosmos. Because still, it is probably true that most humans are probably not really believing or are aware that there are myriads of other types of beings out there who are very intelligent. And some of them are very much more spiritually advanced than most humans are. I think the public tends to hear more about what I call the booga booga, the negative, scary ETs, and think that they're coming to take over the world and they're doing horrible things to people. And in truth, there are many extraterrestrial beings who do physical exams and poking and probing all kinds of things like that. But also, even those very same beings, often I have found out in the regression details that often those beings who are poking and probing, and it seems like a very involuntary situation, but they turn out to actually be physically healing the person of whatever is going wrong in the body of the human. And very often they're giving very good advice and guidance and counsels. So we know that there are many people on Earth who are receiving guidance from extraterrestrial beings. And that guidance always, at least as far as I know so far, is very, very benevolent, very high-spirited, high-minded. In other words, they're not advising people to do negative things. Quite the contrary. They're inspiring those people. They give guidance and messages too. And some people have the ability to channel those messages from these very benevolent beings. And that's a benefit to all of us when we have the opportunity to hear that. So basically, that's what the hybrids are. And just like the starseeds and the walk-ins, it is all for very benevolent purposes. And frankly, I think as a human being, I am not a walk-in or a hybrid, maybe a starseed. But anyway, as a regular human being, I think that it is really excellent that we are getting this help. And particularly now, because the stakes are so high about our surviving and about our doing life on Earth in a better way. So thank goodness for these beings here to help.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I have so many questions.
Well, I've got a couple first, and this
Yeah.
is going to be some chivalry here. So sorry, honey.
Yeah, go for it, Michelle.
All right. So Rick Davis has asked, I would like first to hear her experience, actually both of your experiences, to get a better understanding on how both of you came to look into the theory of hybrids and starseeds and walk-ins.
Well, I'll be happy to share my story. I came in 1999, and prior to that, I was a very sick person. I had been diagnosed with bone cancer, brain tumors, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. I was told I had the beginning stages of multiple sclerosis. I used to walk with a cane. And there were other things, but needless to say, I was a very sick person, and I was in a downward spiral. And what happened to me, like I said, I would not have believed something like this possible because, that was not my belief system. I grew up in Virginia, went to church, you went to heaven, you went to hell. There wasn't a whole lot in between. But what happened to me was I went to bed very, very sick. And the next morning, it felt as if someone reached down, grabbed me by the hair of the head, and pulled me bolt right up in bed. And then it was like lightning ran through my body. Then I was in white space. Now, a lot of people say because I was in white space, I probably had a near death experience, and maybe I did. I don't know. But what I do know is I was out of pain. I was very peaceful. I was surrounded by unconditional love. And the next thing I knew, my peripheral vision started coming in and then my frontal vision. And as I sat there looking around the room, everything was the same, but everything was different. I had no clue that I had just had a soul exchange, no idea whatsoever. But when I got up and I got out of the bed, I was walking across the carpet and I caught my reflection in the mirror. I remember stopping and just staring because it was as if I was looking at myself out of someone else's eyes. And of course, I'm thinking, this is pretty weird. First off, I'm sitting up in bed. Now I kind of look weird, but I look the same, and everything's different, but everything's the same. And then all of a sudden, I started having all these flashes about past lives. Now, the important thing about that is when I went to bed, I didn't even believe in past lives. Okay. I thought it was a cop out, quite honestly. And all of a sudden, I'm remembering past lives. Then I'm remembering universal truths, some of which I share in the book when I'm talking about dimensions and densities and timelines and etc. And then I started remembering healing modalities that I had never studied. So all of a sudden, my mind is like, what the heck is going on? There's something not right here. Then I started hearing voices and I'm looking around. I don't see anyone, but I'm hearing them just as if we're having this conversation. I knew nothing about clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience at the time. Then all of a sudden, I started seeing people walking around. And when I saw that, I thought, okay, I've lost it. I've been sick. I've got a dysfunctional marriage. I have 3 children. I've been feeling, horrible. I've had a psychotic break because I had just enough psychology to start psychoanalyzing myself and trying to figure out what was going on. But that's not what it was at all. I had had a soul exchange. Now, years later, as I began to work with my guides, my angels, what I call my collective, and there's a whole story about how I got here and me being part of a collective. But as I started studying with them, I was asking them, am I a body snatcher? Because I didn't know, and I surely didn't want to be one. And they began to explain to me about pre-birth plans, and they began to explain to me how the soul of the previous body, this body, had finished everything they came to do, and it was time for them to leave. However, in leaving, because in our pre-birth plan, we have certain choice points. And if we feel that we're ready to go, we can go during one of those choice points. So the body had set up this scenario, being very sick, etc. That was the choice point to leave when I came in. But in doing so, that would have had a devastating effect on the children. They would not have reached their potential, etc., etc. Now, here's where, as if this isn't strange enough, but prior to my coming in, as I mentioned, I was part of a collective. And back in the 80s, really back in the 70s, the collective and we were nothing but pure consciousness. So we had to be at least a 7th density being because that's when you lose embodiment. So we were in the Andromedan system, and we literally were watching a craft basically using a pulsation system to get rid of this AI technology that was coming into the backside of the Andromedan galaxy. And so we felt a calling right then as we were witnessing this happening. We felt this calling, this tugging, and it was Gaia crying out for people to come and to assist. Okay. So we left that area and we came and began to work on the crystalline grid. Now, we really arrived somewhere around the early 80s. And the work that we were doing was helping to repair because there had been a piezoelectric field that had been pulsing into the crystalline grid and it had caused really some damage. But also, this had been pulsing in those vibrations of separation, of lack, etc., connecting people into what we call the false grid. And then we were trying to infuse unconditional love, support, kinship, freedom, those types of light codes into the grid. Now, the reason that we were doing that is we're all connected with a collective consciousness, and it begins right here around each one of us. It swirls all the way up to the right down beneath where the crystalline grid is. So we were trying to pulsate that information in. When the soul of this body cried out to be released, it was decided that I would be the aspect to come in because I could be boots on the ground. And ever since I arrived, my message has been letting people know that there's so much more than they've been told that they are. There's so much more out there, that they are a soul having a human experience. They're not a human with a soul. And that is a huge difference. Okay. So when you are a soul having a human experience, you can look at this is kind of our spacesuit for planet Earth, if you will. Okay. And when we're finished with this one, we will go on to something else. Maybe we'll come back to Earth. Maybe we go to the Pleiades. Maybe we go to Arcturus. Who knows where we're going? Maybe we'll go in to become an interdimensional being. That's up to the soul and whatever the birth plan is. But when I came in, from the time I arrived until this very minute, everything has been about helping people to wake up, to tell them that they're more than what they've been told that they are, to share the information that I know to be true from what I've experienced. Now, a lot of people, they don't believe the way I do, and that's okay. I didn't believe the way I do either, before all this happened. But, the other thing is when the soul aspect came in, I was instantaneously healed. Now, the important thing about that is the soul that had left was Arcturian. So within my holographic field, there was already a framework that could hold the energy of the Arcturian. Okay. And so when I came in drip by drip, more and more of the Arcturianness of the collective came in. Over time, then more and more, as the body was able to heal, as the neurology healed, because having this framework allowed me to enter a sick body without frying the biology or the neurology. So as the body healed, as the brain healed, as the body got stronger and stronger, it was able to hold more and more of that collective energy, to where now I operate predominantly as an Andromedan. And so in my life, I am here not only to provide these messages, but to offer healing to people, conduct light language, channel an Andromedan elder mother called Tiamu, and I bring her energy in. And that serves as an activation to help people wake up, because everybody on this planet holds within their physicality these light codes that have been brought about from their soul. And everyone who is on this planet, if you are here right now, you're watching this, listening to this, whatever, you hold a specific frequency that's needed by Gaia right now at this time, because I assure you, you would not be here. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't know my life purpose, or I'm feeling depressed, or this or that. And it's like, you know what? You are significant everything about you significant. I can assure you from my memories, there are lines of souls waiting to come onto this planet. So how special are you that you're here on planet Earth at this time, at this pivotal moment when Gaia is making this transition, when humanity is waking up, and you're here helping too. It's just that I happened to come in when I was 38 years old, and this body was about to expire. But when I did come in, I did not come in holding all the memories of the physical body. I came in holding my memories, the collective's memories, and over time, I have been able to regain some of that. Now, immediately, I had a love for my 3 children and my parents, and that was about it. So from that time, I hardly know anyone, schoolmates, hardly anybody that I ever stay in contact with because I don't have the memories that I can connect with them. And within 3 months, I had left that dysfunctional marriage. Within another 3 months, had accepted a job in a different state and met my first spiritual teacher. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Yes, it sounds.
Well said. I mean, okay. So, first of all, Barbara, I want to let you know we're getting a little bit of feedback, I believe, from your speakers. So, if you see that I mute your microphone on my side, it's just picking up just a little bit and can hear a little bit of an echo. So, if you see your microphone getting turned on and off, that's me over here. So, don't worry.
Okay.
All right, my big question with the walk-ins, where does the old soul go?
Well, I asked that to my collective as soon as I had the wherewithal to ask that question. And the soul was finished. The soul was done with this life experience and it went on. Now, I was told that the first thing that happened was it went to a place where it received a sound, light, and frequency bath, if you will, because the body had been very, very sick. There was a lot of trauma that had occurred in the lifetime. And so all of that was cleared away. And then the soul went on to do whatever its next mission was to do.
Okay. All right. So you brought this up when you talked about AI. Are we in trouble? And this is for both of you ladies. Are we in trouble from this whole AI thing that we see going on? We've seen enough of the predictive programming of eventually we end up with Terminators running around if you watch, Hollywood and everything. But the AI is getting incredible to the point where you can type a few words in and have a whole video created of, say, Michelle over there saying something completely wacky and nobody would know any different. Is this the technology that we should be very wary of that's attracting a lot of these beings? Because it seems very anti-spiritual to me to deal with this AI technology. So I'll turn that over to both of you.
I am very concerned about that myself. And we sort of are slowly being turned as humans into transhumans. And I find objection to that as well. I think, AI can do some wonderful things. And we've been using AI in certain forms for a long time now, and apparently that's been beneficial in many ways. But I am really concerned about some of the uses that it could be developed into. So I don't know. How about you, Sheila?
I mean, yes, I agree. I'm not for transhumanism. And at the same time, I believe that that is one particular timeline. And so I think that we as a species have multiple timelines ahead of us. So wherever we put our consciousness, wherever we put our thoughts, we're creating that particular timeline. We have individual timelines and we have collective timelines. Okay. And then these collective timelines then can become a reality once there's so much energy into it. Now, for me, I don't, there is good with AI and there is bad, but I'll tell you, when we were in the Andromedan system, We wanted to keep it out. And so that, but when we saw that come in, honestly, it looked like a metallic worm. I mean, it was huge. The whole sky just blacked out with it. That is a different type of AI than what we're experiencing right now here on this planet. So there is potential for AI to grow, for it to become its own type of being, just based on my memories. I don't see us headed down that path. I see humanity on a much higher path. Also, the same thing with all these catastrophes. I don't think that we're going to be experiencing those. I think that's all a lower timeline. And we are up on a much, much higher timeline. When you look down if you look at the earth from above, to me, it looks like a flower of life. And why? Because of all the pods of people whose light is very bright. Okay? Because we do within ourselves, we hold light. We draw that light in from the sun. Everyone knows that. We hold that light frequency in us. As we spiritually progress, we hold more and more light within our cellular structures. I believe that one of the reasons that people are seeing so many crafts is because that is the way our brothers and sisters can help us to say, wait a minute, there's a lot more going on here than what we've been told. Tell me about this. Well, you know what? If they've got all this advanced technology, we're still safe down here. We don't see any wars. If they had wanted to do something negative to us, as advanced as they are, we wouldn't even be here now having this conversation. So they're very benevolent. Those beings who are looking over us, the craft that we're seeing. A lot of times people say, well, how do you, account for people being abducted and going on ships? As hard as it is, a lot of times this is in our birth plan. A lot of times we volunteered to have these experiences because guess what? You may be helping your native race. Now, on Earth, if someone says, hey, would you like to be abducted? We'd say, heck no, stay, you get away from me. No, there's a lot of decisions as a human that we would never, ever conceive of saying yes to. But when you look at it from a higher perspective, when you look at it from your soul, who is eternal, who has a much, much different plan than what we have here on the earth, it's likely that we could have volunteered to do something like that to help out another species.
Right. Barbara, let's go ahead and get to you and what your experience was that drew you to this subject and looking further into the hybrids and starseeds and so on.
Well, it was certainly something I never had expected. I grew up, as I said, as a regular person. I became a psychotherapist licensed in 1976. And I then started doing a lot of traveling and having spontaneous past life memories come up that were so vivid and so detailed and so full of feeling that I thought, I think really there must be such a thing as reincarnation, which I had never really believed before. And this led me eventually to becoming a past life regression therapist. In the 1980s, I was trained for 5 years. And then by 1991, people started coming to me for regression work, not for past lives, but for understanding some brief experiences that they had been aware of with unusual beings visiting them. And in some cases, they'd be aware of being conscious enough of the experience to realize they were being taken away by those beings for a while. And usually they didn't remember many details about what happened. And they really wanted to understand that little bit that they did remember consciously. So that got me into the regression therapy work with people who experience extraterrestrial contact. And even in those very early days, this was 1991 that I started doing that part of my work, I was meeting people who were expressing that they felt quite different than most of us people. And I met a young woman who was a walk-in. Fortunately, I had heard about walk-ins from a past life therapy colleague. And then when I met this young woman at a conference and talked with her parents as well, and realized that, oh, this was a case like Sheila was talking about how just one day she just woke up and felt really, really different and had a whole different trajectory in life. And so I actually talked with that woman and did a regression with her. And we confirmed that, yes, indeed, she was a walk-in from one of the extraterrestrial races. And as I continued doing regression work with really a few thousand regressions and 2,000 to 3,000 people up until now, that more and more aspects were coming out in that work, like the whole hybrid aspect started coming out. And I started meeting people at UFO conferences, especially, meeting a few people who actually were hybrids. And somehow I had the intuition to recognize that immediately upon meeting each of those people separately. And then I was invited to a gathering of people near the Palm Springs area in Southern California, and spent 2 different weekends with this group of people who were hybrids. And of course, they looked like regular, normal people, very delightful people, very intelligent people. And they were telling about their relationship with their extraterrestrials and how it had been explained to them about how they had been hybridized and what they considered their missions to be. So that was really thrilling for me to get to personally spend time with them and hear from them. And then there was a wonderful author from England named Miguel Mendonça, and he independently had become very interested in hybrid beings whom he had discovered in England. And he was calling me and asking me what I knew and about different pointers about hybrids. And we decided to write a book together, which we did, called Meet the Hybrids. And so we interviewed at great length 8 different people for the book, each one of them being a hybrid and telling their full story. So that's how I got into that. And then Starseeds are people that I was discovering in my regression therapy work here and there, not with everybody by any means, but occasionally there'd be a person, it might be a male, it might be a female, who would come and particularly want clarity through the regression, clarity about why they are really here on Earth in this life, what their real mission is. And I found that in those sessions, they always got a lot of information from their guides, like Sheila has mentioned, her collective, her guides, and each of these people had guides who were encouraging them in the work that they were born to do here. So Starseeds, it turns out, had been various forms of extraterrestrial beings in previous lifetimes, and maybe had some human previous lifetimes as well. But they did have that heritage of these star beings. And so that really helped them in this life as well to accept the fact that there really are these other beings out there, whether we have been aware of them or not. They are there, and so many of them, of the extraterrestrial types, are really, really benevolent. And we hear about the ones who seem to be very aggressive and scary. And there are a huge variety of extraterrestrial types. But it's wonderful to know that there are a lot of the extraterrestrials who really are caring about Earth, about humanity, and are very, very loving, inspiring, and are encouraging people to really be of help here. So anyway, that's how I got into it. It sort of grew bit by bit. I never knew that any of this was going to be happening for me. And I am so grateful and delighted that it has, that it's all unfolded bit by bit for me.
It would be nice to see more of an uptick in the benevolent influences over society, because we have seen such a huge decline in the value of human life over time.
And also just what we see going on around us anymore. I mean, there's war pretty much breaking out all over the place.
It's everything from, human characteristics of narcissism to wars, to gang violence, to road rage. It just one thing after another. So, I don't know if you have any guesstimate on, what the percentage of the population would be starseeds or hybrids, but you would think that it would start to outweigh the numbers of those that have more of a malicious intent.
Well, hopefully so. We know, or at least I do, mostly about the starseeds and hybrids and walk-ins who are here in the United States, because that's where we are. That's where we mostly connect with people. But just because there are people all over the world who are having extraterrestrial encounters, I'm assuming that there must be starseeds, walk-ins, and hybrids everywhere in the world. Hopefully they can be making a dent in some of these problems that we do have here. But I don't know in terms of proportion. Do you, Sheila?
I don't have a percentage, but one of the things that my collective has shown me is that one of the reasons why we are seeing so much darkness, it's not that the darkness just appeared. It's always been here. But all of a sudden, more and more people are waking up. More and more people are saying, you know what? This is not acceptable. When did people start acting like this? When did it become acceptable to watch people shoot and rape and murder people on television for entertainment? That goes back to the, as if we were back in the Roman era, and a lot of people are not even watching television anymore. A lot of people have chosen to turn off the news. A lot of people don't read the newspaper. And when I speak with them, one of the things that they tell me specifically is it's like, I don't want any more negative influences in my life. I know it's there. I'm not hiding from it. And it's just like when people ask me, I'm focusing on this new earth. That's where I'm putting my energy. Yes, it's horrible here, and anything I can do to help and be of assistance, I am more than happy to do. But I don't dwell on that, because when I dwell on it, I become part of that problem, even though I don't want it. And how can that be? It's because I'm focusing on what I don't want. And when I focus on what I don't want, I'm putting energy into it. And because we are co-creative beings, I am helping to perpetuate that problem because I don't want it. And I'm putting all that energy into it. I'm putting anger into not wanting that, which helps that to build and build. So instead, when I figured that out for myself, I decided, okay, I'm going to start putting my focus over here. I'm going to start putting my focus on what if every day I got up and things were beautiful? What if everything went my way? What if everyone was happy and healthy and safe? What if? Now, is that happening? Little by little, I do see it happening. Yes, it is. But I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna here or tell people to put your head in the sand. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, instead of being very frustrated about what's going on, I look over here and it's like, this is the earth that I want to create. And that's where I try to put my energy.
You know, that's a wonderful emphasis, Sheila, and I hope everyone will take some good recommendations from that, because I agree with you that, you know, there's so much negative to focus on. I mean, my goodness, on my cell phone, every time I open my cell phone, there are all these messages from people I don't even know, you know, about one bad thing going on after the other. There's some good things too, but it just helps all of that to build. So I also encourage people to put your mind on the good things, what you want, how you want the world to be. And fortunately, I do think that there are some people, I don't know who they are, but who are really working to try to uncover a lot of that really horrible stuff going on and catch those people and stop it as much as possible. So that's good. So I think between them and our putting our attention into how we would like it to be, we have a chance of turning things around.
There's a lot of rabbit holes we can go down, and I've gone down my fair share, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm becoming what? Yeah. So I'm putting that energy in there. I had to stop.
Yeah.
Well, here's a rabbit hole I want to go down. Speaking of rabbit holes, so Dave brought this up in chat. He says, I'm certain I have died at least a dozen times. And he had mentioned earlier about being shown his body, you know, in different bodies. So, you know, past lives. And I said to him, you know, I have recurring nightmares about being dead or getting killed. And usually it's like being buried alive, which right now in this day and age, I am claustrophobic to no end, to the point where I had to get an MRI not too long ago. And it's gotten so bad that I had to go to a special MRI that was open so I could, go into it. And I will wake up sometimes at night and think, my God, I just got ran over by a tank, or the building collapsed around me and I died. You know, these weird things. And when I saw that Dave put up there, it made me think of, you know, holy crap. Is this possibly something that might have happened in a previous life? It's just so bizarre, because it's vivid. It is. I could tell you what it smells like to be trapped in a dusty building that's on top of you and you can't go anywhere. You know, things like that. It's just really bizarre. So is that like where regression comes in and how that helps people and figure these things out?
Yes. I've had many people come to me over the years wondering about things like that for themselves. Claustrophobia is one that has come up a number of times. And also one woman came because she had such a fear of water, particularly her head being in water, that she could not, in her whole life, she had never been able to tolerate having a shampoo in the shower. She could have one at a hairdresser with her head back, you know, and her face not covered with water, but never could imagine that. And she never went swimming up to about her waist, you know, because she didn't want to be covered with water. And we did a regression to that phobia that she had about being in water. And it turned out, of course, that she had been a young man in another life, and had been operating a small sailboat by herself, and it became contained sort of in an eddy, and not able to move freely. And anyway, she went to repair what she thought might be an injury to the bottom of the boat, went down into the water, and make a long story short, she died in the water, drowning. And that was in a previous life. And it might have been a couple of centuries ago, or maybe even more. And it really was affecting her in this life. So having done the regression and then the what I call a clearing, healing, releasing process that I do with people, to really just wash that all through, that whole fear, the phobia, and send it down into the earth, and then be, really enriched with great white light from the highest source. Anyway, after that, she had no more fear of water, and even called me the next day very triumphantly to say, guess what? I got in the shower, I put my head under the shower water, washed my hair, and I was just fine. And years later, she still testified that she had no more phobia about water. But yes, people have come up with lots of fears that they have that they don't understand. And when we go back to the source of what that fear or phobia is in the regression, then the scenario always comes up about just what was going on. They get a sense of who they were, what kind of person, like Native American or African or European or Northern French woods or whatever. And then the whole scenario that happened that led to their death. So when a person dies in a very traumatic way, usually it's a sudden traumatic way, then that is likely to carry over in the memories of the soul and plague the person in this lifetime. So I think that, those fears and phobias are really to be respected. I mean, they really do come from somewhere, legitimately. And the wonderful thing is that they can be released from the person. I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of people in the audience might have occasional thoughts about that sort of thing. Like, why do I react this way? Why does that particular person strike such negative feelings in me? Or why am I so drawn to that other person? Or why am I going into this field of study or this field of work? I mean, there are beginnings, roots, sources for all the major issues in our lives. And the regression therapy can really help. Just one session even can just really help clear up something like that.
Sheila, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I do. I want to add also, because I agree 1,000% with Barbara. And I also want to offer another explanation as well. In the book, we talk about timelines. And right now, where we are in the trajectory of this planet, we have multiple timelines that are beginning to collapse on themselves. Now, a lot of times with these parallel lives that we're having, let's go, most people I'm sure have heard of an oversoul. And so if this is your oversoul, all of these little fingers can be multiple dimensional lifetimes that's going on right now. And you can have multiple. You can have 1,000 of these taking place right now because our souls are so large. So what happens if you're having a parallel experience where another you has just experienced that building collapsing? Another you experiences an automobile accident. Another you experiences whatever you're dreaming about. Yes, these can be past lives that are collapsing upon themselves, because right now we are pulling to us all of those lifetimes that benefit the whole right now, and they're collapsing into this now moment. So you're bringing all of those past lives, you're bringing all of those multidimensional lives into the now moment. And when that happens, a lot of times the only way that our physical brain has to be able to deal with that is to have dream time. And I would say, if anyone has a question, to give Barbara a call, because she is a phenomenal hypnotherapist.
Thank you.
And you've had experience with that as well, right? You do that as well with people.
Mm-hmm. I
Right?
do.
Yeah.
I use the Dolores Cannon method with the QHHT. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You mentioned earlier, and I think it was both of you had talked about this, the ascension process and the waking up, the spiritual thing that it seems like is the mission for some of these walk-ins, hybrids, and starseeds. What exactly is that? What is meant by that? What are we awakening to? I've heard people say higher consciousness and all that. What does that mean?
Well, I could give a really good example. If you'll remember a couple years ago when we had the shutdown, many people started going within. And when they came out, they were different. All of a sudden, they started asking all these questions that just months before would have never entered into their mind. That's a waking up of sorts. When you have people who look up in the sky and they see craft, without a shadow of a doubt, they know that they know that they know that that's a craft. That's a waking up, because maybe a year ago they may not have even believed in something like that. On the spiritual side, when we wake up to the fact that we are a soul having a human experience, we begin to expand our consciousness. When we look up in the sky and we see craft, we begin to expand our consciousness. When we look around in the world that we live in, and we no longer are going to allow to be dictated to, there is a waking up. And so as we wake up into this higher consciousness, again, we can bring in more higher light quotas into this physical body, into the cellular structure. I'm sure many people have seen what we look like with the night goggles. You see that, that infrared pulsation. Well, that's the vibrational frequency of our cells. Okay. Many people who see auras are seeing the colors of that vibrational frequency. And as we begin to wake up, those things within us begin to shift and change. It would be interesting to see someone who is awakened and someone who maybe isn't awakened with with the infrared goggles, just to see how that, the cellular vibration fluctuates. But there are so many scientific studies that have been done that show even shifts in the DNA as people begin to wake up.
Yeah, good point. Barbara, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, well, speaking of that very last point about DNA being affected, I am also a crop circle researcher for 25 years in England, and having gone into probably 2,000 individual crop circles during those years. Wonderful experiences, I must say. Anyway, there is so much energy in each crop circle, if it is a genuine one. In other words, not the man-made ones. They have no extra energy at all, and the plants die that have been laid over. But in most of them, and I believe the proportion is that most of them are genuine, made by the unknown source. And I think they come from intelligence out there in space. That it has been said that human DNA is changed, that the DNA of the person who actually enters the crop circle is altered to the benefit of the person just by the energy in the crop circle and by the geometry of the patterns, so that there is a channeled source from the 11th dimension who channeled through my co-author of my book, Crop Circles Revealed. And that 11th dimensional entity said that even just looking at a picture of a crop circle on the internet or in a book or wherever will help to change the DNA of that person who's looking at it in a beneficial direction. But particularly if you can have the blessing of going into the crop circles. So I think of all the crop circles I went into and always spent at least an hour and sometimes several hours. Good heavens, what's happened to my DNA from all of that experience?
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I just want to say that I think that the subject of crop circles is very much in line with what Sheila and I have been doing with this book, Cosmic Convergence. It is part of Cosmic Convergence, part of our knowing about a much larger cosmos of intelligence and beings who are interacting with our actual physical Earth. And I think benefiting all of humanity by doing that, by making the crop circles.
You bring up DNA, and it made me think of, and I'm pretty sure they've confirmed this, that not only like the crop circles like you bring up, but they've pretty much substantiated, and maybe you know this, Barbara, about how trauma can be transferred via DNA. Like trauma that you have experienced as a child or as an adult, and then you create a child, some of that trauma will be transferred via DNA to a child, to your child.
I think that's very possible. And also, of course, the example, like if one parent has had a lot of trauma and is carrying that, that affects the energy of that person, the frequency of that person, and the personality, and all of that would affect the child as well.
Sheila?
Yeah, we do talk about that somewhat in the book when I'm talking about the holographic structure of the human form. And we're talking about ley lines and the chakras and the meridians of the body, because just like with me, when I entered into this physical form, the reason that it was instantaneously healed is I carry a different DNA. And it imprinted immediately on the current DNA, and it overrode the coding of that DNA. And one of the things that happens as people begin to heal, they may release ancestral traumas. They may release miasms. And by miasms, I'm referring to your father had health issues, your grandfather had health issue, a particular type of health issue, you have that particular type of health issue. That's what's called miasms. Those things are genetically passed down in that family lineage. However, even a spiritual awakening can begin to shift the DNA that we have. Because if you'll remember, when I talked about when I first came into the body, previous to that, I was working with the collective on the grid system of this planet, because there had been all types of, imprints that had come into that crystalline grid. Some of those imprints were also illnesses, disease, those kinds of things. No longer is that piezoelectric field now being beamed in, but guess what? Our ancestors have walked in that field for thousands of years. So that's imprinted on the genetic structure. I believe when we wake up, when we have a spiritual awakening, we instantaneously break free of that genetics. And that's why we begin to start asking all these questions. And that's why so many people are having miraculous healings, because they are no longer bound by that genetics that was really making them sick. And so, because I went through that, and yes, I had a different type of experience than most people, but it just goes to show that when you have higher vibrational frequency applied to sick cells, those cells do change.
Fascinating. We have a good friend. Michelle and I have a good friend. His name is Ray Szymanski, and he's an author of 3 books. That one of them is about the 1966 UFO flap that happened here in Michigan, and it, was the whole swamp gas, right, kind of thing, and it just destroyed any kind of conversations and stuff, even with all of the eyewitnesses, the sheriffs and everything that went on around here. But he also did some books that were about people who were abducted or hybrids. And Barbara, maybe you can speak to this, or both of you can speak to this. He said one of the things, because he worked at Wright Pat and retired there after 40 years and was brought about, he got involved in investigating UFOs and alien abductions and stuff, because the people on the base were very strange, and asking him things like, hey, do you want to go see our UFOs? Have you heard about our aliens? Yada yada. And he goes, what is this all about? So it started him like looking around, and he found this one family who said that they were hybrids, or she had a hybrid child, very intelligent, etc., etc. He said that he noticed that all of these people that were saying they were abducted could point to, or somewhere on their body was a small impression of like a scoop mark.
Yes.
In have you seen this? And can you can back this up here, because we were at a beer and pizza night with him after he was here in Taylor, Michigan, and giving a lecture at the library. And we're like, Ray, go ahead, have a Long Island iced tea and have some pizza. Now tell us something. And so he had spoke to this, and I was like, no way, they all have these? He goes, absolutely. You'll know if they are a hybrid, if they have a scoop mark type of, Michelle, you remember this?
I do.
Yeah. If they have a scoop mark type of a scar or something on their body. So,
well, I would like to address that.
Absolutely.
I've seen many scoop marks on people. The first one I saw was in the calf of a man's leg. Another one was in the upper arm of a woman. Another was in the lower arm. And I mean, they could be anywhere where there's little extra flesh. So my association, though, with the scoop marks, rather than being a hybrid, my association is with implants. In other words, the beings have come to the person, taken this little, like a little divot. Like I think of a little scoop instrument that's used to scoop out a melon, although smaller. So it looks like that sort of a scoop mark. And it doesn't break the seventh layer of skin. It doesn't bleed, but there definitely is this indented scoop mark. Now, what I have found out over a course of years, particularly because of the work of Dr. Roger Lear, who removed and had his colleagues remove quite a number, about 18 or 19 implants from separate people. And I happened to be present for 2 of those removal sessions in a medical office. Anyway, what we think happens is that the beings come, take a little bit of the flesh from the person, and then take that back to their own place, their own lab on board, I should think, and keep that tissue. And then when they are going to put an implant in that person whose tissue they already have, they enclose it in that tissue, and the tissue adheres to the implant. So
very smart.
Yeah, very smart. So when they put the implant into the body does not reject it because it has its own tissue around it. So maybe they tried many times before taking the little scoop mark in that tissue, and the implants always got rejected. I don't know. I'm just guessing that. But they did eventually learn to take the person's tissue and adhere it to the implant so it would not be rejected. But I don't think that we can just relate that to a hybrid, although that process may have happened to some hybrids too. But it definitely connects with people who have implants in their bodies.
Sheila?
Yeah, I think that was a really complete answer that Barbara gave. That's my understanding too.
Okay. This kind of matches up to where I have the new book from Lou Elizondo, The Eminent, and he talks about actually holding one of these implants or seeing it or something like that. And he said it was almost like it was encased in a type of some type of a gel or something that actually made the thing appear to not be rejected. So, not being rejected by the body, but also gave it a quality that it was almost like it was alive itself.
Well, that makes sense because it actually was alive. And maybe the beings have a way of preserving its life too, before they wrap it around the implant and then implant that in the person. Yeah, so I think that makes sense what he's saying.
Yeah, and one of our very first guests that we've had on the show here, Guy Merritt, says that there's no inflammatory response. Well, you wouldn't have one, would you, if it was encased in your own material?
Right.
Yeah.
You would if it did not have the person's own material in it.
Your immune system would definitely want to fight that.
It would react.
Yeah. Oh, wow. This is...
Once in a while, I've known of people who've had an implant that was in there for a while, and they didn't even know it. And then suddenly it popped out. Like that's especially typical when somebody, often starting in childhood, when a person has had one inserted up the nose, inside the nose.
Yeah.
That at some point it's just made its way out and fell out, or the person sneezed it out. And then they wondered, what's this thing? So one of my clients who came many, many times back in the 1990s, she and her little boy, her little son, were both experiencing lots of extraterrestrial contact. They were taken many, many times. And but she was doing a lot of work with me, and she became very comfortable, very interested, very curious about the whole thing, and wanted to learn as much as possible. And so from being frightened at a certain point, she became, now I want to know as much as I can, and especially about what's happened to me. So one day she was sitting on the sofa with her little son, and she noticed that there was a little thing on the sofa between them. To her, it looked like a hairy or a fuzzy raisin. And they had not been eating raisins or anything that looked anything like that. So she thought, oh, that's disgusting. What is it? So she just picked it up and went into the kitchen and flushed it down the garbage disposal. So it was gone forever. Then she thought, oh, what have I done? That was the evidence. That was probably the most important little object I've ever had in my life. And I got rid of it right away because she thought it must have been an implant that had fallen out from either one of them, her or her son. But
right,
we can get very spooked about those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think so. Can I play devil's advocate for a moment?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so I was thinking about this earlier when I was reading through a lot of material, and I put on my hat and I said, what would a clinical psychologist say about this stuff? And Sheila, you had mentioned, you would think that you were crazy if this hadn't happened to you. Michelle and I were underneath a 300-foot black triangle driving home one night, and long story short, my thyroid went kapooey. My body's trying to kill my thyroid, which gives me hyperthyroidism, which is very rare in males, especially my age. Usually it's hypothyroid. And I received a message as I was driving the vehicle underneath this thing, and Michelle's looking at it and stuff that was like, you don't belong here, get away, you don't belong here. And it wasn't words so much as it was like this intense feeling of fear. And I've heard all kinds of things. It's the TR3B, it's our stuff, it's the okay, whatever. I figured we were both crazy. Okay, so I was right there with you. Or we're both delusional or whatever. But I was thinking,
probably not.
Probably not. I for both of us to have a mutual delusion is probably not, and then we're set on this path, and 4 years later, here we are talking to you ladies, right? I mean, it's crazy where things have gone. And I honestly think at this point it's for some type of a purpose. But if I put on my materialistic clinical hat and say, Barbara, you have a background in psychotherapy. Are these people suffering from dissociative identity disorder?
Not
experienced. Okay, so can you talk to that a little bit and knock that down for people out there that want to poo-poo what is going on?
Well, first of all, I think that anybody who says that they are having UFO sightings or contacts with, visits from any kind of unusual beings, extraterrestrial beings, in my opinion, they are not crazy. They should be taken seriously. And that's one of the reasons why I was very pleased to be doing the regression work with people, because they get so many details of the experience that usually they remember just a very few moments of. Or it's very typical, too, that some people will see a very close UFO sighting like you and Michelle did. And then they think that that's all that there was to it. They had the sighting. It was really impressive, impressed them forever in most cases. But what they may not know is that they were actually taken by the beings on that very close UFO and taken and had a whole experience and then returned to the car. Now, sometimes people are aware when they're driving along, they either do or do not see a craft, but they realize that by the time they got to their destination, the time is all wrong. Like maybe it's an hour and a half or 2 hours later than it should have been when they arrived at their destination. And they were, well, what happened? What happened to that hour and a half or 2 hours? So sometimes people will come for a regression. So we call that missing time. That's probably very familiar to people who are interested in this particular field, the missing time experiences. And I do know of a number of different situations where a person, or sometimes two people or more, had a close sighting like you did, and maybe didn't have missing time, maybe were not taken, but their life changed because of that. In other words, they began being very interested in the UFO phenomenon. And in many cases, like the two of you, you have actually gotten into doing something about it, not only researching it and talking to other people, but holding these podcasts. I mean, what a wonderful thing, I think, that came out of that sighting that you had. I don't know if you know of Dr. Leo Sprinkle up in Washington. He was a psychologist teaching at the University of Wyoming. And when he was quite a young man, he and his fiancée, who later became his wife, they were driving along in Colorado. And one very early evening, I think there was still some daylight, and right above and in front of them was a gigantic UFO. Neither of them had ever heard of UFOs before. So what a shock. What is that? Anyway, it deeply, deeply impressed them and got their minds really thinking about this whole subject, thinking about these crafts that are coming from somewhere unknown. And that led him into doing all the wonderful work that he did to help people to know through hypnosis and counseling how to deal with their experiences that they were having with extraterrestrials. Now, he probably never would have gone into that work if he had not had that close sighting. And it seems like that's true for the two of you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Absolutely.
Excited to hear that. And that's been true of many, many people who've really gone on to look into this field in various ways. And many who've written books and given lectures, they haven't necessarily been taken by the beings, but they may have had a very vivid, quite close sighting of a UFO, and that affected them. I think that the energy from the UFO, from the ship itself, can really affect us. I mean, it's not only seeing it, but it's like a whole big force field that emanates from it. And that affects our energy field, in my opinion. I think that that's part of it. And then you see your souls, you and Michelle, your souls may very well have decided before coming into this incarnation to do something about this, to let people know about this part of reality going on. That's true for I myself. I had a regression done for me once, and in which it went to took me back to that soul state of being before coming into this lifetime. And I saw all kinds of things about my life, my parents, my brother, where I was born, what the culture would be, what the influences would be, sort of the certain stimulation advantages that they would give me. That was a really good reason to be born into that family. And then the question from the regression therapist was, now find out what the main purpose was for your coming into this lifetime. And immediately, without a moment hesitation, I knew and said, oh, it's to show people how it really is. And what I meant by that, at that time, this regression happened in 1983. And I did not know about extraterrestrials at that time yet. But what I meant by showing people how it really is meant that we are all spiritual beings living in a spiritual realm. And then now and then we incarnate into physical form on the earth. And not only are there millions of these spiritual souls in that realm, but there are what I thought of as others. And it seemed like behind me, there was a tremendous group of other kinds of beings who were not human, but I didn't know what they were because, as I said, I didn't know about extraterrestrials yet at that point. But that I knew that I am supposed to come in, be in this life and show people how it really is. And how wonderful, from my point of view, that I am really getting to do this in my work and even right this very minute. So,
yeah. Well, for me and Michelle, it was like, I think for like 3 days, we didn't even talk about it. And I'm a science teacher, for God's sakes. It's like, I don't buy any of this stuff. Well, 4 years later, what happened with me, and then all of the people we've met, all the things that we've talked about and seen with people, and then we see the government now is saying this, that, and the other, but at least they're acknowledging that something is happening.
Yes.
So before we wrap this up, Sheila, did you want to beat me up a little bit about my dissociative identity disorder statement?
That's the first place I went when this happened. So, I'm right there with you. However, I will say that my memories have remained consistent. And the only thing that has changed is more information has come in. And I will say that I am a very stable person with a very good job of healing people and, staying right on track with my memories. And so when you have a dissociative disorder, one of the things, I always laughed. My psychology teacher said, the difference between someone who's neurotic and someone who's psychotic, because a neurotic person builds these castles in the sky and a psychotic person lives in them. Disassociation comes when you can't tell the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And so, I know what happened to me. I'm not out there trying to convince anybody. This is my story, what happened. I've been on craft. I've got scoops. I've got marks. I've got hours upon hours of missing time. I've got memories of being in spirit world. I've got, knowledge about the universe that I never studied. So, hey, if I have a dissociative disorder, it's to the human reality that they're trying to feed to us.
Right.
Yeah, that's well said for sure. All right, I have one last question I want to pose to you both, and then since I brought up the government thing, have either of you been targeted by a government agency at all for your research and experiences? Anybody come looking to you to talk to you that just smelled of like a counterintelligence person or something along those lines?
I had one person, and this was probably about 15 or maybe 20 years ago. I was at a MUFON group, a Southern California, Orange County MUFON group, and in the audience was a very tall, rigid-looking, upright man who came to me during the break in the lecture. And he said he seemed to know who I was. I didn't know who he was. But anyway, he said something about, I would like to see your records of the people you work with in regression. And I said, No, that is totally confidential material. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I'm under total mandate to keep my information private, especially anybody's identity. That is not available to you. And he looked, he was very stony, very stern, very serious, kind of looked threatening. He didn't do anything threatening, but he sort of looked threatening. And I just held my ground. I said, no, that's not possible. I'm mandated to keep that information private. And he just turned on his heels and walked away. And I never saw him again. Fortunately, he wasn't there at the end of the lecture. That's the only thing that I'm aware of that has been a hassle to me. So I'm very fortunate. How about you, Sheila?
Where do I begin? Well, within the first 5 years, I used to have people sitting outside of my house with little bitty, with the microphones and what looked like the little dishes, to the point that my kids were afraid to go outside. And they continued that until, as, a mom who gets that mother bear. I mean, I took off down the driveway after, like, what the are you doing here? You're scaring my kids.
Right.
They took off and I never saw them again. I've had those kinds of things. I've had I've had my phones tapped before and had to work with the phone companies. I've had my computers do all kinds of crazy things. One month I went through 2 different computers because of things happening. And then I used to get, after working with several different people, they were called targeting phone calls. And one of the calls would say, at a certain time, at blank blank, every day, the clock always chimes. And I'm like, wow, how did you know that? Click. And then they would call back, today you drew the whatever card. And I'm like, no, actually, that's not the one I drew. Click. I mean, this went on and on and on. Well, I would just go home and tell my husband, I'm like, people around here are just crazy, because when I first moved to that town after I remarried my husband, I was very open that I was a walk-in, and I had people say, you're going to have to tone it down just a little bit because we're not quite ready for that. So I just thought it was people calling and hassling me, only years later to find out that somehow or the other, unbeknownst to me, I must have been picked up and had certain things implanted in my mind. But because of the walk-in energy, it didn't work. And so these phone calls, and I don't want to say them because if someone has that experience, it's going to, they're going to open up. But I've had people, following me, and I've had to, the same car over and over, and I've had to get out and say, what are you doing? And then, they go away. But yeah, I mean, there's been all kinds of crazy things that have happened. But you know what? I just say it's part of the human experience, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I'm here to let people know that they are so much more than they've been told that they are, and to never give up. And that the reality of it is we are eternal beings, and this is just a blip on our radar screen. So as bad as things get, rise above it and try to look at it from a higher perspective, knowing that this too shall pass.
Yeah, well said. So the book is Cosmic Convergence, Journeys of Walk-ins, Starseeds, and Hybrids. Ladies, before we end this, would you guys like to give any contact information, things coming up, any parting words you want to leave for us as we wrap this up? Because believe it or not, we're almost at 2 hours. So it's a good conversation when you look up and you go, whoa, almost 2 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have a website, which is barbaralamregression.com. barbaralamregression.com. So people can communicate with me that way. There's a place where you can type in, and then that gets forwarded to me as an email, which I will eventually answer. And then I have a YouTube channel, which is Barbara Lamb ET regressions, and lots of different discussions going on those podcasts of variety of natures, including extraterrestrials. And Sheila, how about you?
Oh, yeah. You can find me at SheilaSeppi.com. SheilaSeppi.com. And you can see all the different services I provide. You can also access my business where I provide healing, physical hands-on healing services, as well as the long distance things that I do. And you can find out about the Conscious Awakening Network, and you can find out about our book.
Yeah. Awesome.
And
All
those-
right.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you very much, ladies. We're definitely going to have you back on. Maybe in a couple months, we'll see how the book sells. I mean, I barely got through 1/3 of the questions I had here. And I find this stuff so fascinating, and I know Michelle does too. And just because of everything that we hear from people, scoop marks, the visitations, this recurring theme that seems to happen over and over and over again, to the point where the government can't even ignore it anymore. And nobody's buying mainstream media anymore, because we know we've been lied to from all different angles. So, the more people we interview now, it just seems that this is this recurring theme that is going on. And I really, that scientific mindset, I need to figure out what's going on. So it's like I got to jump after it. So, ladies, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and good luck with everything, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Have a great night, ladies.
Good night.
Whew, all right, everybody. What a great show. Michelle, what do you think? Blown away?
Yes, I'm on overload.
I see you putting Barbara's website in chat. We'll put all that stuff in.
I put Sheila's and Barbara's, just in case anybody in chat wanted to jump over and check out their websites. Wayne, do not forget to do the poll.
Correct. And I will put that stuff as well in the show description once this is done. So, all right, everybody. So let's take a look at the poll. The poll was, do you think there are, and I know I spelled there wrong, there are non-human intelligences that exchange spirits or souls with humans? 54% of you said yes, and 46% said no. So kind of tight there, guys. And we'll see what you guys think. If you grab that book, and you should grab that book and check it out. It's once again, it is Cosmic Convergence, Journeys of Walk-ins, Starseeds, and Hybrids. So make sure you guys pick that up. All right, Michelle, I think with that being said, what do you think? Is it time for us to get out of here?
Yeah, because it's an early rise for me tomorrow.
It is. Yes, it is. It's it sucks being a teacher when you have to get up at 4:30 in the morning. All right, everybody. With that being said, we want to say thank you for everybody that showed up tonight, and all the great members and everything. You guys are awesome. And so, remember, Michelle, what do we do?
Have a great night, everyone.
Have a great night, and keep those eyes
to the sky.
To that sky.
To the sky.
Right.
Possibly the one near Frankenmuth.
Yeah. We're going to look
that's
into that.
for another night.
Yeah. All right. Good night. Where's the button at? There it is.